you see what Pete Townshend of The Who said about the Kinks? He said this of their leader, Ray Davies.
Ray Davies should one day be poet laureate.
And then he said this.
You know, he invented a new kind of poetry and a new kind of language for pop.
Pete loves the Kinks so much that he capped the entire interview with this.
I don't think there's a single song that he's written that I don't like.
And when I heard that, I thought, are you kidding? No bad songs? He sang this in 1995, which is 1 year after the last Kinks album in 1994. So he has the entire catalog of the Kinks, 30 years, and he can't find one bad song. But then I got to thinking, as I've been reviewing every album and looking at their 6 different eras, it's not in their Invader period. The only question marks are cover songs. Their classic period, all the albums flopped, but the songs are legendary. Same with the reboot period, which features my favorite Kinks album, Arthur and Lola. Then there's the concept album period.
Present you, the public, with a star. Yeah, yeah, yeah!
But when you start listening to those 4 albums, you find really genuine moments. Everything's good, even the silly parts.
With nudity, breasts that are bare and pubic hair.
But now we're at the 5th era. The Kinks got a new record company. They agreed, no more concept albums. We won't even really sing about English subjects anymore. Surely there's a bad song somewhere. That's the challenge of this video. I'm looking at era number 5 of the Kinks. The Kinks go arena rock. Surely there's a bad song somewhere, right? We'll find out now on Robert's Record Corner. I'm Robert. Whoa, my goodness, that band just drips in male sweat. That is not the Kinks. That is Grand Funk Railroad and their signature song from a band that I think maybe is best left in the past. But you can make a case, looking at this next era of the Kinks, that they are becoming de facto American band. I mean, if you look at the statistics, not one studio album charted in the UK since 1968, whereas 2/3 of the studio albums by the Kinks reached the top 100 in the US, including all the 6 albums we'll talk about here, and even 2 of those concept albums. Why the English turned their backs on the most English band of all time is beyond me. This is a very different period for the Kinks. Ray Davies doesn't sing again in a clear English accent until 1979. The question is, did they sell out? And I don't like to talk about bands selling out or not, because if a band repositions itself to make some money, isn't that what we all do in life? So if a band tries to do something to sell, while they're in their creative power or not, fine. Some people get mad at Bob Dylan for doing that hilarious Victoria's Secret ad, but it's consistent. He was joking about that in 1965.
If you were going to sell out to a commercial interest, which one would you choose?
Ladies' garments.
So did the Kinks sell out by kind of changing their image and changing their sound and losing those English accents, at least at first? Yeah, I mean, the Kinks kind of did sell out, but that's not important to me. What's important to me is, are the songs good? Are they worthy? Are they adding to the lore and legend of the Kinks? Now I'm going to look at that by breaking down these 6 albums into 3 couplets. First, I'll look at the Midlife Crisis albums, Sleepwalker and Misfits. Then those nervy, angsty new wave albums, low budget, give the people what they want. And then their plea for the MTV generation with State of Confusion and Word of Mouth. And it all begins in 1977.
Show your album to camera.
Yeah, that was me on a good night, so if you turn it around.
Turn it around, see
That's me on a bad night.
Ray's quote there pretty much tells the story of their first album going into the arena rock in 1977. Because in it, I think that Ray is looking at the 2 sides of his personality and using night as a metaphor for the dark side of Ray again and again and again. The title track, Sleepwalker, was the first single on the album. I'm a sleepwalker. It's pretty catchy, but it does bear a passing resemblance to a certain Steve Miller song that happened to be in the charts when the Kinks were recording it.
This is a story about Billy Joe and Bobby Sue. Everybody got problems, buddy, I got mine.
But that said, Sleepwalker was a top 50 hit, and for the Kinks, that was their first hit in the US since Lola in 1970. So not bad. Now it's huddled on side one with two other songs that I think work best if you think of them as songs that Ray is singing to himself. The first is Mr. Big Man.
You were the best friend I ever knew.
Which has a promising start with his verse, but then turns into kind of a little over-the-top guitars. It feels as unsubtle as an Alice Cooper song to me.
Mr. Big.
Better song is Brother. And as much as I wanted this song to be about a point of reckoning between Dave and Ray Davies, brothers in this band, I really think it's Ray singing to himself.
Nobody gives a damn anymore.
Now, side two shifts gears right off the bat with Jukebox Music, which was the second single on this album. Kinks being Kinks, it didn't chart.
It's a song about a girl who listens to the jukebox all day and really believes all the lyrics.
You believe the stories are real. It's all the jukebox music, all the jukebox music.
I think the best song on the album should have been a single. I would have had it as the first single. Buried on the second side is Stormy Sky.
Did you ever see such a stormy sky? It's never been like this before.
And it's a rare Kinks song that's kind of comforting.
I know that we'll be alright.
One more thing, I got to go back to the cover. You have this two-part cover. The front of it, you see Ray masked but unguarded. And on the back, you see him unmasked and guarded. But I want to mention it too because this photo bears a passing resemblance to this David Bowie Heroes, which came out 6 months later. Just saying. The next midlife crisis album for the Kinks is Misfits, 1978. Like Sleepwalker, it's pretty slick, pretty adult-themed album, but on the whole, a little bit more hopeful than Sleepwalker. Perhaps a little too hopeful. I mean, some of the messaging is very direct. Live life suggests that you should live your life.
That's all you do.
Get up suggests to get up.
Get up, get up, get up, get up.
It's a little bit bumper stickery for me, but the songs are really good. Now, the first single on the album was Rock and Roll Fantasy, which is thematically very similar to Jukebox Music, where kind of building a fantasy world about this idea of rock and roll.
Don't wanna spend my life living in a rock and roll fantasy.
But in the song, I think Ray is singing more to the band itself, pondering the future of a band now going into its 15th year.
For all we know, we might still have a way to go.
The best song on the album, and it should have been released as one of the 3 singles on the album, is the title track that starts the album, Misfits. This is a great song.
You're a misfit. Why don't you join the crowd and come inside?
The Go-Go's nearly named their band after the song. And to me, it always sounds a little bit like Against the Wind by Bob Seger. But don't worry, Bob took it because his song was 2 years later. And the Kinks don't do that cheesy part about all the cowboys.
Let the cowboys ride against the wind.
Now, a song I really like buried on the second side is Out of Our Wardrobe. It's like, sounds a little bit like Billy Joel doing My Life, but for transvestites.
He's not a dirty. He's only living out a fantasy.
It is a song where a couple kind of switches gender roles.
She wears the trousers and smokes a pipe, and he washes up. She helps him wipe.
And it's a rare Kinks song, Lola being another key exception that has a happy ending.
'Cause when he puts on that dress, he looks like a princess.
Now I need to talk about Trust Your Heart because this is the first Dave Davies composition in 7 years. And it's very hard to know what to say about it. It's like he took bits and pieces of random rock songs of the 1970s and put them together. A little ballad strumming, some chugging guitar, and some soaring for the rafter choruses. It's very clear he means what he's singing. Someday I might do a video just about Trust Your Heart because it absolutely fascinates me, and I do like it. On the whole, I'd have to say I like Misfits album, but it doesn't quite work as well for me as Sleepwalker, so I'm going to give that one the edge of the Midlife Crisis albums. By the time the Kinks got around to making 1979's Low Budget and 1981's Give the People What They Want, rock and roll had changed. And these changes are reflected in the urgency and attitude and the whole spirit of these Kinks albums. I do want to say a little something about production, and it reminds me of Los Angeles, because I don't go to Los Angeles often, but every time I do, I have to give myself permission to like Los Angeles again because it's so irrational and widespread and the traffic is ridiculous. And there's something about the on-the-nose production of this era of real arena rock of the Kinks. First of all, the guitar sound I don't always like, particularly when it's kind of what I call testicular forward distortion, kind of rough guitar riffs. And I don't know if they're using tube amps, but the sound isn't as good as other guitar sounds that you hear at the time. Compare it to Cars record, compare it to the Rolling Stones' Some Girls. And then it's the backing vocals. I mean, because traditionally I love when you hear kind of an isolated Dave Davies supporting Ray Davies and backing vocals. But you see kind of a disappearance of Dave into a chorus of males echoing whatever Ray is singing in the lead.
Catch me now, I'm falling.
There's something a little forced about that to me, a little twee. It makes me think again, the Beatles had George Martin, the Stones had Jimmy Miller. Maybe the Kinks could have used a really powerhouse producer. Roy Thomas Baker, I think it would have worked well for this period. Now, this album, Low Budget in 1979, really kind of paves the way for the Kinks for real into arena rock. I mean, this was built for the stage, and you see this in these punky songs like Attitude that starts the album, or Pressure. I really like the song Misery. I think that the best of those kinds of songs is the title track, Low Budget. It wasn't released as a single for some reason. I think it's the best song on the album.
Just gotta learn to economize.
You see Ray kind of responding to rising prices and inflation.
Shopping at Woolworths, low discount store, dropping my standards so I can buy my one.
Very Kinks, very funny. And then he does the English accent, which absolutely cracks me up. The year before, the Stones with Miss You had kind of played off a disco beat, and you see this here with the Kinks.
Woke up this morning, started to sneeze, had a cigarette and a cup of tea.
It reached 41 in the charts in the US, so it was a hit. I think it's a pretty good song. I really like the new wave songs on this album, particularly buried at the end of the album, and it really shouldn't be the last song on the album, is Moving Pictures.
Nothing in life is a permanent fixture. Whoa, no.
Now, the Kinks released 3 singles off this album. Superman, a song called Gallon of Gas about the rising petrol prices done in kind of a jazzy blues way.
No one's got no gasoline.
I don't know why that was a single. And then the third song, Catch Me I'm Falling. This is a song that kind of baffles me. It starts promising enough.
I remember when you were down and you needed a helping hand.
But then, just when you're settling into this verse, out of nowhere, pop. And you hear a completely, neatly reproduced jumping jack flash guitar part with those tube amp guitars. And I can't take it. I can't handle that song. You know, the Kinks were incredibly productive in the 70s. If you compare what the Rolling Stones had done in the 1970s, some great work, but you look at what the Kinks did, you have double the amount of studio albums. If you go back to Sleepwalker 2 years before, the title track sounds a little like Steve Miller to me. In the song Full Moon, they completely take a melody from Hey Joe by Jimi Hendrix. Were they running out of ideas? Now, by the time the Kinks released this album in 1981, Give the People What They Want, rock, and particularly new era of rock and roll, were really thinking about the state of radio. This album, Give the People What They Want, starts with this. Manically turning the dials, looking for a missing DJ, wondering what's gone on with rock radio. It's really a pretty good song. And the following song almost continues that idea with the title track, Give the People What They Want. Now, this isn't my favorite kind of Kinks. It's like a very aggressive, testicular forward guitar riff and this chanting vocal. But thematically, it sets up what the album will do. You know, the song's talking about the Colosseum mob-like people. All they want is violence, murder, rape, so let's give it to them. And you see a cast of characters through this album.
You never let it show what was going on behind those killer's eyes.
Stop! Hold on. Stay in control.
The second side starts with Destroyer, which is an absolutely fantastic song, which is really unique because it's completely repurposing an old Kinks song in a new way.
Girl, I want you here with me.
They take All Day and All the Night, their hit from 1964, and refashion it to a song about a bipolar paranoid. I don't know of another rock band that consciously replicated something of their past that way. I may be missing something. David Bowie would do it later with the cover of Next Day, which was an update of his Heroes album cover. The best song on the album to me is just about the mundane and the everyday, a very common Kinks story with Predictable. This was the first song that I ever heard of the Kinks, and many people my age were introduced to the band through this because of their funny video for it.
Sure as the nose on my face.
Now, Ray at the time was dating Chrissie Hynde of the Pretenders, and you can hear her singing on this song and a number of songs on the album. And this is a case where I really like the guitar overdubs a lot. There's a lot of tumult on this album, and it all ends very sweetly with Better Days, which was a single off the album. Ray's second marriage had fallen apart, and he made this as a heartfelt, genuine farewell.
I hope tomorrow you find better things.
When I compare these albums, I like both of them. I would have released different singles, might have tweaked that guitar sound. Of the two, I prefer Give the People What They Want. In 1984, MTV held its first Video Music Awards, and it was as 1980s crazy as you could possibly imagine.
It doesn't matter whether you win or lose, it's how good you look.
Now, there were 5 groups that were nominated for Best Group Video. 2 from ZZ Top, Police, Huey Lewis, and Van Halen's Jump. There was one video in circulation around that time that was not nominated, and I bring it up because it's better than any of those videos. And the reason is, the Kinks being the Kinks, they released their video for Come Dancing 6 weeks too soon to be considered for the first ever Video Music Awards. Come Dancing is, in my estimation, an absolute miracle. It was the most successful hit that they had in the US since the 1960s. It reached number 6 in the US. Even the UK liked it. It got to number 12. And in terms of concept, it was everything that the arena rock period told them not to be. It was completely English. It told a very working class story of Ray Davies' childhood in Muswell Hill, based on the real story of his sister Renee, who on Ray's 13th birthday gave him a guitar, went out dancing, and died in the arms of a stranger. Now the video is absolutely epic. You see Ray's acting talents and you see that era really brought to life. Come Dancing came out on this album from 1983, State of Confusion. And 1 year later, they would release the Kinks' Word of Mouth. And I see these 2 albums as the last couplet of this arena rock period. 2 albums that are released in the throes of the early craze of MTV. We'll talk about them briefly because I know I've run on too long. State of Confusion was put together when Ray Davies and Chrissie Hynde were still together. And a wonderful song buried on the second side, Heart of Gold, is perhaps about Chrissie and their new daughter, Natalie, that was born around that time.
I see you've got a little girl of your own.
sorry to repeat myself, but it should have been a single. Instead, they released State of Confusion, kind of a rocker type. They also released a pretty good ballad, Don't Forget to Dance, though.
Don't forget to dance, no.
It's a little bit too 80s in production sound. The second best song on this album is a song that only appears on the cassette, so I don't have it on vinyl, and that's Long Distance.
Keep my head together in that hot Australia weather.
And another song that I really find funny and I really like on this is Young Conservatives.
Have you heard the word? The revolution's over. Schools and universities are turning out a brand new breed of young conservatives.
Now, I don't think State of Confusion is a classic Kinks album, but listening at it again, I actually like it more than I expected because I don't listen to it very much. But I will say this. This came out in '83. It's better than the Rolling Stones' Undercover from that year. It's better than The Who's It's Hard from shortly before, and it's better than Paul McCartney's Pipes of Peace. It's actually a little better than we think it is. And then came Word of Mouth and its rather unremarkable cover. Now this album, unlike before, came out after Chrissie Hynde dumped Ray to go off with a Simple Minds singer, Jim Kerr. And you kind of see this reflected on some of the songs on this album. There's songs about missing persons. One's called Missing Persons.
Maybe I stopped her from being free. Maybe there was something missing in me.
Word of Mouth seems to talk a little bit about how the news was broken to him about Chrissie leaving. The first song on the album was the first single, and it's actually a fantastic song, Do It Again, with a great video.
And now we're back where we started. Where all the people going.
And to me, that right there is the best guitar sound of this entire era. Dave Davies had two compositions for the first time since the Misfits album, Guilty, which is really good, but the best song and one of his most iconic songs of his entire career is Living on a Thin Line, a song about England. This, I can tell you, was very popular in 1984 on American rock radio, but it wasn't released as a single. A mistake. So the ultimate question, which is better, State of Confusion or Word of Mouth? I really think it's up to you to decide. It's hard for me. I'm going to give a slight edge to Word of Mouth, which kind of surprises me. And the reason is I like the production more, and there's no songs on the album that I don't really enjoy listening to. And I can't quite say that for State of Confusion title track or the closing song, Bernadette. And that wraps up Era 5, the arena rock period. And when we look at this whole period and think about it, I'm reminded of that kind of Kinks deep cut song, I'm Not Like Everyone Else. And for all of their career, you could really say that the Kinks weren't like everyone else. Whether they were slicing their guitar amp to get that extra distortion side in '64, or going into this band hall vaudevillian type songs, singing with English accents, singing about everyday English life, making 4 concept albums in a row. I mean, the Kinks weren't like anyone else, ever. Now, this period is different because they kind of became like other people. It's not my favorite period. I like every other period more that we've talked about already, but I do like these albums. Now, we talked about some of the best songs. I think the best secret song of this period is when the Kinks decided to threaten Santa Claus.
Father Christmas, give us some money. We got no time for your silly toys.
Best album, I would say of the studio albums, probably my favorite is Give the People What You Want. If I'm not feeling punky, I would go with Sleepwalker. But it's not the album I would recommend from this period. I think to get the essence of arena rock of the Kinks, you need to go to the arena. This double live album from the low budget tour, One for the Road, is really good. I mean, the band is fully on. Ray is in his Mick Jagger phase, and new songs and old sound really good. But one last thing. Remember Pete?
I don't think there's a single song that he's written that I don't like.
Like that there wasn't a bad Kinks song. Now, we don't know if he's heard them all, but I would advise you, Pete, if you're listening, you might want to avoid this era because I found a bad song. There's a single, it's on their live album, it's on Greatest Hits albums, and I don't think it's any good. They're singing about Captain America, which is fine, but it unnaturally jumps into Jumpin' Jack Flash and it just stops me in the tracks every time. I just don't want to listen to it anymore. I'm sorry. I was going to finish all of the Kinks with this video, but I'm going to save Era 6, what I call the fade out period, the last decade of the band, where they did 3 studio albums and really no one was paying attention. And the reason why I'm going to save it for another video is because I need to give it more time. If there's one thing I've learned through this exercise, and this began for me 4 years ago in earnest, is the deeper I go and the more I think about it, the more I find I really like things I didn't think I liked before. Like a lot of those concept albums. And even some of this arena rock period, I'm like, oh yeah, I actually do like that. And so I'm going to really give their last 3 albums the attention it deserves and re-listen to them and think about them for a little bit before finishing with the Kinks Fade Out. What do you think? Do you disagree with me? Are there other Kinks songs that you think are bad? Hopefully not. Please like and subscribe. Thank you for watching Robert's Record Corner, and thanks for listening to the Kinks.